Hey everyone, it's Mandy Gibbons here, and I'm here with Nicholas. And Nicholas is incredible. We've just been talking last week. We had a conversation, and now we've just been talking for the podcast as well. So he specialises in sleep, but I'll let him introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he does. It's sort of it's mind blowing how clever he is in regards to this and how much knowledge he has. So yeah, I'm excited to have you here, Nick.
Thank you very much, Mandy, and thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah, people just call me Dr. Nick because that comes out easy. I've been doing sleep and fatigue management for about 25 years now, and it probably took me the first 10 years to really understand that the only way of managing fatigue was to get good sleep in the first place. So probably the last 15 years, I've really focused on improving people's sleep. And unlike a lot of my colleagues who will say, you know, if you don't get sleep, it's bad for you and all these things, I tend to look on the more positive side. If you want to, you know, reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes or an aging brain and things like that, yeah, I can teach you how to get the right amount of sleep. And in that 25 years, I've actually been in front of about 25,000 people. So I've had a very large group to work with and try some of my, I guess, experiments with getting to sleep at the right time. So in this podcast, I will talk about exactly the right time for most people to go to bed and get to sleep. So that's me.
That's awesome. I'm excited about this. So expand on that, what you just said, because that was when we spoke about this even last week, and you said what you were going to be bringing to the table in this podcast. I was like, oh my goodness, so many people need to hear this, right?
Yes, absolutely they do. So I might start off with the fact that sleep cleans the brain. And as a normal healthy adult, we should have approximately 100 billion neurons in our brain. And they work very actively during the day, you know, thinking about everything we think, imagine, feel, and do is just a series of communications through these neurons, you know, billions and at a time. And of course, we use a lot of fuel doing that.
Yeah.
In fact, the brain only weighs about 5% of the total body weight, but uses around 20% of all of your fuel that you use for the body in a day. Yeah. So you can see how much fuel we do burn.
Yeah.
And I've got to say that I used to be in a very laborious job where I was just working really hard for 9 hours of the day.
Yeah.
But since then, where I've been doing more office type work or thinking and strategizing, I've got to say you can feel the effects of actually having to think more as opposed to just do.
Yes.
Now, when we go to sleep, the brain is very good at cleaning some of the toxins and proteins that we develop during the day. We have a special type of cell called a glial cell. And this glial cell has a channel in it which opens up when we sleep. And it literally draws out these toxins and proteins. It dumps it into the lymphatic system of the body, which then gets filtered. And every time we sleep, we are literally cleaning out the brain. Now, the problem, if you don't get enough sleep, and I guess if we talk homeostasis, which is basically maintaining a good balance for health and wellness, yes, we need about 1 hour of sleep for every 2 hours awake. And now my colleagues have been telling people to get 8 hours of sleep for literally decades. And it's made very little difference because the one thing they missed was they forgot to be sleep salesmen. I am a sleep salesman, so I need to sell you the idea of sleep. So this cleaning the brain, you know, 1 hour of sleep for every 2 hours awake, and you will basically clear all the rubbish that you have accrued in that day. And we've done several experiments where we've got healthy people and we've kept them awake for too long without enough sleep, say 4 or 5 hours sleep. And what we've done is we've measured the amount of leftover rubbish in the brain, and there are 2 particular proteins that tend to build up when we don't sleep enough. And these proteins, one is called tau protein, T-A-U, and tau protein causes what we call neurofibrillary tangles. So in other words, it tangles the fibers within the neurons to the point where they literally snap and break down, rendering these neurons useless. These neurons then start to die off, and then they are reabsorbed and metabolized, and basically they're gone from the system. So that's one nasty protein you don't want to leave behind. The other one, which is sort of like its evil brother, is it's called beta amyloid protein. Now, those 2 proteins together form what we call plaques, and a lot of people have heard of plaques before. Plaques are like a plug of this protein that builds up between neurons and literally blocks the communication from one neuron to the next. Now, this is oversimplified, of course, and it builds up in large areas of the brain. One of the very common areas that it does build up, it's actually on the side of the head. There's one on each side. It's called the hippocampus. It's a seahorse-like structure that houses short-term memory. So what you can so far recall from what I've said is currently living in a small part of your brain as short-term memory, but it is short-term memory. Now, if you build up a lot of these tau proteins especially and cause plaques in that area of the brain, you soon start being unable to log these memories and actually retrieve them when you need to.
Yeah.
And when we talk aging brains, it's quite simple to understand that as you get older, these proteins will build up and build up and build up, especially over years of not quite enough sleep. And we see it in different occupations where people tend to limit themselves to very short sleep nights. And, you know, farmers are one of the big ones here. A lot of farmers will try and live on about 5 hours of sleep, which is okay if you nap in the afternoon. But if you don't nap in the afternoon and top up on your sleep, then these guys tend to have aging brains that are a little bit quicker than it needs to be, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So
these couple of proteins, when we sleep, they're literally drawn out of the brain. We also get flushes of cerebrospinal fluid that goes through the brain to wash this stuff into the glial cells for removal. So if you can get 1 hour of sleep for every 2 hours awake, you will wake up every day feeling refreshed, having cleared the rubbish from the brain, and you're doing the best for your brain that you can possibly do. So that's one reason we sleep. One of many reasons. I've got more. Now, I spoke about the amount of energy we use in the brain, and the energy source is called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP for short. This adenosine triphosphate has 3 molecules of phosphorus included. That gets drawn into the neurons. You break the phosphorus bonds to release the phosphates, and that sets off a little burst of energy for that neuron to then fire off. So it's quite complex. The brain uses an enormous amount of this ATP every single day. When we've lost the phosphate component of it, it's left as a chemical known as adenosine. This adenosine will then build up in the brain, and it tends to attach to little adenosine receptors that are based on the top of every neuron. once these adenosine receptors are full of adenosine, these neurons will no longer fire off until we've got a fresh supply of fuel come in to kickstart them. So I guess the easiest way to make sense of this is the longer we're awake, the more fuel we burn, the more adenosine we build up in the brain, and then the more neurons will start to stop actually firing off. The easiest way of thinking about this is the longer we're awake, the dumber we get, if that makes sense. And there's been a fair bit of research that shows that between 17 and 19 hours of sustained wakefulness, if you hop in a car and drive, your performance in that vehicle is the equivalent of someone driving with a 0.05 blood alcohol content. Pretty nasty. This is quite fresh for me too, because I just came back from a trip to Tasmania, and while I was down there, I heard on the news that there was a lady who was detected in her car driving erratically. When she was breath tested, she returned a positive reading of 0.256, 5 times the legal limit. Anyway, nothing to do with sleep, but a lot to do with, I'd call that stupidity. I mean, that is just absolute no care for other road users. But anyway, I digress. So far we can see that sleep has 2 really important main reasons: to clean the brain, and once the brain is full of adenosine, so it's not a waste product, but it is a thing that's measured in the brain, and once it gets to a certain level, it will cause what we call a sleep drive. Now, don't be confused with feeling sleepy. It's more of a tired brain. So once you get to about 16 hours awake and you got a fair amount of this adenosine there, the brain will go, okay, well, let's not do anything but sit down and watch TV. So you might turn on your favorite episodes of Netflix or Stan or whatever, and just sit there and veg out. So that is pretty much showing you that instead of watching some of these shows, you should be in bed, because what happens when we sleep to that adenosine is we metabolize it, we recycle it back to ATP for work the next day. And again, to get the right homeostatic balance, you need roughly 1 hour of sleep for every 2 hours awake. So a 16-hour wakeful day, 8 hours sleep roughly. 7 to 8 hours will take care of it. And even doing things like, if you feel drowsy on the side of the while you're driving a vehicle, and if you pull over and have a 20-minute nap, you will reduce some of that adenosine to the point where you should have enough fuel for another couple of hours. Something that I really like to drive home, because there's way too much carnage on the road, and it's a very sad state of affairs when someone falls asleep at the wheel and has an unfortunate event and kills someone in the making. And I have literally met people who have done this, lovely people who have just made a simple mistake. They've got a sleep debt from not enough sleep. That's a buildup of adenosine carried into the next day, so that then when they drive, and especially in the afternoon, they've got a lot of adenosine there, and the brain is trying to put them asleep while they're driving a vehicle. Now, this is where I have a bit of a problem with road safety messages that go out too, because road safety messages will say clearly, stop every 2 hours and take a break. Nothing wrong with that. They'll also say, if you feel fatigued, stop and take a break. I make a point when I am in front of classes of employees doing fatigue management training, I ask them the question, at what point would you stop driving a car and take a break? And you know what the overwhelming answer is? When I start falling asleep. And the slightly less response is when I start yawning and the eyes, I'm having trouble keeping my eyes open. And you know what? At that point, as I mentioned before, the brain dumbs down. At that point, your brain is that dumbed down because the brain is trying to put you to sleep that you will make conscious decisions to push through and try and get home or try and get to your destination, even if it's an hour away. And this is where people go wrong. And you need to know sleepiness portends sleep. If you feel sleepy, it's because the brain is trying to catch up on sleep. And as long as you're sitting down, it can do that. And that's the thing. In the car, you are sitting down. And the brain knows when you're sitting down, and it dumbs down the frontal lobe, which is your conscious decision-making component, and also the back part of your brain, which is known as the occipital lobe. That's what drives your eyes to look long, look short, look around, or close in those cases. So let's just say, let's have a snapshot of a normal Australian that might get, they might wake up at 6 o'clock, for example, and go off to work. 16 hours takes them through to 10 p.m. But let's just say they get home, they have dinner and the shower and all of these things, put the kids to bed, and then at say 9:30, quarter to 10, they snuggle up with their spouse on the lounge and they're starting to feel a bit tired or sleepy. And they say, I might go to bed soon. And the partner says, oh, look, there's a new episode on Netflix. How about, there's a new series, I should say. How about we just watch one episode? And they go, yeah, sure, one episode. Okay, because it's only 40 minutes. We've got time. And then I'll go to bed. And then 3 hours later, you've looked at your watch and you've gone, oh my God, it's like after 12. And now the alarm's still going to go off at 6. So you've been awake 18 hours. And when I spoke about the 1 hour for every 2, you now need close to 9 hours to clean out the rubbish, all the proteins and toxins, and to recharge and recycle fuel for the next day. So when you wake up at 6, the job's not done. It's not finished. And you'll literally start the day with some of these horrible toxins and proteins in your brain still, and you wouldn't have recycled enough fuel to get you through the day. And so you've already got a large component of adenosine left behind. And then if you add another 8 hours, that's 2 p.m. If you drive a car then, you're driving through a part of the day we call the post-lunch dip. People think what they eat makes them sleepy. It's not as much that as it is having a sleep debt from the night before. So if you've got a lot of this adenosine built up by then, the brain is going to say, I don't care what you're doing. If you're sitting down, you are going to sleep. So if you're working in the office, you might be typing away and then you'll see this big line of characters across your screen and find that you're leaning on the thing half asleep, or you start drooling, or you're in a meeting and you're nodding off. Not good in Zoom meetings, of course, because everyone can see you. But even worse than that, if you're operating machinery or driving a car and sitting on your backside, you are a prime target to try and get you to go to sleep. And people have made the mistake of stopping and taking a 2-minute break. So they drive a car, they feel sleepy, and they go, I'm going to do the right thing. I feel sleepy, so I'll take a break. And they take a 2 or 3 minute break, walk around the car, get back in the car and sit down. Do you know what's changed? Absolutely nothing. The amount of adenosine is still there, And for a while there, the brain has said, oh, we can't put you to sleep because you're walking around. Okay. Oh, you're sitting down again. Let's have it. Let's put you back to sleep. And people have fallen asleep within 10 to 15 minutes of getting back in their car after a break. And some of these have led to, unfortunately, catastrophic events. And I know this because I get involved in some of these crashes from WA Police, major crash, when they believe that someone's fallen asleep at the wheel and killed someone, or someone's died as a result of that tragic accident. I will get involved and I will run through everything to do with their sleep and what's happened. And I'll write an expert evidence report for the courts or for the coroner. And I keep seeing the same thing. People having short sleep. One of the other common denominators is the passenger in their vehicle is fast asleep. And what we see there is the driver will see that person asleep and they'll go, right, okay, well, I'm feeling pretty sleepy myself, but I don't want to wake her up or him up. So I'll push through, I won't stop, I won't wind down the window, I won't turn the radio up and sing like no one's listening. I'll keep it quiet, I'll keep driving, and then they fall asleep. And unfortunately, it's nearly always that person there that perishes in the accident. Yeah. So note to self, if you're ever a passenger in a vehicle and you're asleep, you probably have a 90% chance of being the victim. Yes. So, and here's the rule. If you ever drive me around anywhere, when we get to the destination, your ears might be bleeding because I will talk non-stop and make sure that you stay awake. And I don't care if that upsets anyone because my life is valuable, as is their life. If I'm sitting in their car, then obviously I value their life as well. And I will not let any driver of mine ever fall asleep. So I know I'm getting a little bit off track, but you can see that these two reasons for sleep are very important.
Exactly. And I was thinking too with, like we're told to, and you see it all the time, there's like, well, not as much as you used to, but you used to get free coffees. If you pulled over, you got free coffee, yes. Right? Yep. But even after you have a coffee, if you're really tired anyway, I can imagine the pressure that would be, like you're topping yourself up with caffeine, but your body's still wanting to go to sleep. So you got that fight going on within yourself, right?
Yeah, and that's a very salient point because tragically, people have stopped and had a coffee or a Red Bull or something like that, and then they've continued to drive straight away. And everyone needs to know this. It takes at least 20 minutes for caffeine to enter the bloodstream and do the little bit that it does towards avoiding driver fatigue. And that little bit that it does is caffeine attaches to those adenosine receptors that I spoke about, and it blocks the ability for them to stop the neuron from firing off because it's not full of adenosine, if that makes sense. And so it gives you a little bit of, I guess, ability to keep on driving a bit. But people have driven off before that 20 minutes and straight away crashed. And this has led to fatal outcomes. Yeah. So what I recommend is if you're sleepy, have a double strength coffee or anything like that, but then have a 20-minute nap. And then when you wake up, the caffeine is starting to take effect, plus you've already reduced the amount of adenosine. That often buys you anywhere between 2 and 4 hours of okay. Yeah. I also add, though, that if you wake up from that 20-minute nap, and you must time it to be no longer than 20 minutes, because if you go past 20 minutes and get into deep sleep, when you wake up, you'll feel like trash. And your brain has moved into a different mode of sleep, that's the health and wellness maintenance phase of your sleep. So performance-wise, if you got up and drove then, you may as well be drunk, because that would be the performance side of how your brain is acting for at least half an hour when you wake up in deep sleep.
Yeah.
So set the alarm for 20 minutes, lie in the back of your car, not behind the steering wheel, because we have a saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. So if the brain thinks it's okay to fall asleep at the wheel, that's not a good outcome. So you want to lay down in the back seat. If you've got kids and a partner in the car, partner takes the kids to play for 20 minutes, you sleep for 20 minutes, get in the car and drive them safely to the destination. So that's probably the best advice we can do with road safety. Unfortunately, that is not in any commercials or any adverts on TV.
I was just about to say, that would make an incredible commercial, right? Imagine them pumping that out on you would see so many cars on the side of the road with people having naps. It's not funny.
Yeah, well, a lot of these areas where they used to set up coffee spots could be designated rest areas. And there are designated rest areas around the state anyway. There could be more, but look, you've just got to find a safe and secure spot to park for 20 minutes. That's all it is. The last nap on the side of the road that I ever had was probably around 15 or 16 years ago, maybe even longer. And I was only about 15 minutes from getting to Kalgoorlie, which is where I was going. But I woke up that morning very early, and it was mid-afternoon that I was driving. So 2 bad things there. And I felt a bit drowsy, and I thought, you know what, I could probably get there. And then I remembered who I was. And I thought, you know what, sometimes you don't. So I'm going to pull over, and I just found a spot just far enough off the road to be safe, under a shady tree. And I slept for about 20 minutes, and then I made it into Kalgoorlie well. Yeah. So road safety just needs to, those who are doing the commercials, I wish they would at least just have a chat with me about that, because we're not doing well enough. In fact, one of the crashes that I investigated, the lady did stop for 2 minutes, but then went on and crashed 15 minutes later. And it's just so sad to see people who are trying to do the right thing, but just don't know exactly what that right thing is.
Yeah, and exactly. And, when you're getting out of the car, it's like have a coffee, walk around the car a few times. They tell people, jokingly do some jumping jacks or some walking on the side or move around or something like that. But straight away, if your body is programmed once you're sitting down to just like go down into shutdown mode again.
And what a lot of people don't understand, and this research came out just last year, it was some of the most, for me, it was incredibly fascinating, because I'd been thinking along those lines for a number of years. And that is, a lot of people have microsleeps driving vehicles and don't even know it. And there's a part of driving, I like to call it the lights are on, but no one's home. And it's in scientific terms, we call that driving without awareness, which means, so the brain is full of adenosine trying to put you to sleep, and it starts shutting down the occipital lobe, which drives your eyes, okay? So you look down the road, and as that is starting to close down, you can still see the roadway. You might notice the lines, and it's good if you've got good line markings, and you'll follow the contours of the road. And at that point, you won't remember where you've been, and some of the, you actually cannot record it, because at that point, you are likely in stage 1 sleep. Now, stage 1 sleep is not true sleep. You can do stage 1 with your eyes open. The research that I was alluding to was done in Switzerland, and they got a group of people admitted to the Bern hospital and they were admitted for excessive daytime sleepiness. So during the day, they just felt so tired all the time, they were unable to perform what they needed to do, whether it be work or stuff around the house. As part of the test for that, they do what's called a maintenance of wakefulness test. Now, this test is where you go and sit in a dark room or a dimly lit room without a book or anything like that, no technology, anything like that. You sit on a chair in a dark room. We put probes on your head and measure your brainwave activity, and your one job is to stay awake, all right? Now, if you fall asleep, we do 4 of them through the day, about 2 hours apart. If you fall asleep within 5 minutes, then we say you have excessive daytime sleepiness, and we need to do a full sleep study to find out why. Now, what they were doing in this research was they were trying to get a better way of monitoring exactly when someone falls asleep, whether they have microsleeps or true sleep. And true sleep here is what we call stage 2 sleep. Stage 2 sleep is when you cut off from the world. So if you're driving a vehicle and you have a stage 2 sleep, you'll go off the road and normally crash. So that's what we call a serious microsleep.
So stage 1 is when you're on autopilot?
You're on autopilot, you don't remember anything, you often remark and go, well, how the hell did I get here? When you're in stage 1, and this is the findings of that experiment, nearly everyone in that experiment in stage 1 did 2 or 3 micro sleeps of between 1 and 5 seconds. Now, if you're driving down the road, you won't know that you've done it because you're not recording. Remember, you're not laying down memory. So basically what people do is they just slowly close their eyes while they're driving, and then maybe 2 or 3 seconds later, they'll open them, and they don't even know that they've just fallen asleep. Now, if you're driving at 100 k's an hour, that's 27.8 meters per second. So in that 2 seconds, you've covered more than 55 meters with your eyes closed. And what I see in the run-off-road crashes is if the tyre marks go off the road and into the gravel, if you're in stage 1 sleep, having these micro sleeps, you will normally wake up in about a second, hearing the gravel in the wheel arch, or maybe someone in the back seat screaming. But that will wake you up, and then you'll come back onto the road quickly. Now, hopefully that doesn't lead to anything tragic, but sometimes it does. If you carry on through these micro sleeps, what we find is you go into stage 2 sleep, which is true sleep. You are now, the brain at this point is now cut off from the world. You can still hear, but not as clearly as in stage 1. Your eyes are now closed, so you can't see anything. If you're in stage 2 sleep and there's no audible tactile edge lines on the side of the road, those little rumble strips, normally people will go about 2 to 3 seconds in the gravel before they wake up and overcorrect. And if you can imagine correcting at 100 k's an hour onto a bitumen surface, this is where the car normally starts rotating because you come onto the bitumen sideways. So that's the tragic thing that I see way too often. And it's because of these micro sleeps. You don't get to choose whether you have a micro sleep, 1 to 5 seconds, or a full sleep, which is the start of a 90-minute cycle. You don't get to choose that one. And I remember one of my paraplegic friends, of which I have quite a few, telling me about his fatigue-related incident that caused him to end up with a spinal injury. And that man, I look seriously, the amount of incidents he had on that journey, he could have been dead about 4 times. Mind you, suffering a spinal injury is not that fantastic either. But the fact that his brain was making him, and I hate to say it because this is a person I know, dumbed him down to the point where even after having the first couple of incidents, he kept on driving and pushing through until he had his major incident. It's just amazing what the brain does when we're that tired. So from a practical sense, look, if I was writing the script for a road safety commercial, I would take a lead from what I do. And that is, I drive down the road and I plan to stop before I get tired. That's the key. So the other day when I was in Tasmania, I drove from Hobart to Launceston. It's around about 2 hours, around about there. You know, and if you think about the old commercials, or 2 hours, that's perfect. I'll stop at Launceston. No, not me. I stopped about, it's probably just nearly 2/3 of the way up at a little town called Ross, because I could. And that way, I wasn't tired or sleepy on the way to Ross. And from Ross to Launceston, about another 40 minutes, maybe 45. Again, I was not tired. And the last time I did a big drive in Queensland, that was 6.5 hours, I had 4 stops in that 6.5 hours. I only planned 3 of them. The 4th one was because Google Maps tried to get me driving through someone's mine, and I had to turn around and find out where I was. But the 3 planned stops allows me to stop, get out of the car, maybe have something to eat, something to drink. You know, just drinking fresh water, fresh cool water is very useful. Getting some sun in your eyes, getting a few steps. You don't have to do star jumps or anything fantastic, because at that point you're not tired. So you do a few things that will stimulate your mind. I often, you know, go, oh, look at that, and I'll find a safe space to stop. And I'll walk back and I'll take some photos. Then I'll walk back to the car and off I go. In that 6.5 hour drive, I didn't feel the tiniest bit drowsy at any point in the drive. I won't say it saved my life, but at one point in the journey, I was going around a tight right-hand bend at 100 k's an hour, posted speed limit, and coming towards me was a truck with the steer tyre roughly 1 metre over the centre line, coming towards me at 100 k's an hour. Now, I've learned that in road safety, you try and look 5 seconds ahead so that you can try and get some idea of judgment on what that driver's behaviour is looking like, and you can react accordingly. And I can tell you, within 3 seconds, my car was almost all the way off the road and really slowed down to about 40 k's an hour. The truck actually corrected itself. Well, I'm sure the driver made it do that. And I was okay to go past in that lane. But, you know, just having that awareness, it allows you to see something on the road, react carefully, stay safe, get back on the road, and continue the drive incident-free. And that's what I'm all about. If all Australian drivers can do that, there will be so much less carnage. You know, I'm hearing these promotions about targeting 0 on the road. This is never going to happen if people are tired, ever. As long as people are underslept, I guess you could say, we will continue to have what I call, and I hope this doesn't offend the listeners, what I call brain farts, where we make these little mistakes on the road and we find ourselves going, oh, sorry, didn't mean to pull in front of you, didn't mean to turn in front of you, didn't mean to come over while you're beside me, things like that. We'll continue to have them as long as we're a little bit dopey because we haven't slept enough.
Yeah. I was going to ask too, with you know, people that are sort of maybe working like 9 to 5 or whatever, and they're getting the 8 to 5, whatever it is, and they're working, you know, like they're getting that after lunchtime where they just,
Yes.
like, would it be a good idea for them to have like a something to eat and a 20-minute nap at lunchtime, or how do they?
Absolutely. Look, the absolute key here is get your average of 7.5 to 8 hours sleep every night.
Yeah.
And you know what? We don't fade away after lunch. That's the absolute key. I can drive after lunch any day, and as long as it's not a Thursday, I'll be good as gold. And the reason I say that is because most Wednesdays, I play pool on Wednesday night, and I don't get my 7.5 hours sleep because I'm home later. I'll only get 6 hours. And so just that 1.5 hours short will make me a tiny bit drowsy in the afternoon. So I plan not to drive on Thursday afternoon. But here's the other key. Thursday night, instead of going to bed at my regular time, which is about 10 past 10, getting my 7.5 hours sleep and waking around 6, I'll be in bed at about 8:45, anywhere from 8:30 to 8:45. My brain will be causing me to yawn. And that's my brain trying to catch up that extra hour and a half. And if I'm in bed by about 8:45, I'll be asleep straight away, and I'll wake a few minutes before the alarm going, oh, 9 hours sleep. I am again the king of the world. And that's what it feels like sometimes, because you are actually the master of your own destiny by managing your sleep so that you can be the best you can be the following day.
Yeah,
that's what I love about what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for people that say, well, look, it's just the way I am. I'm a night owl. How would you recommend that they're able to sort of reprogram their mind and body or their sleep patterns so that then they can get that solid amount of healing sleep? Okay,
well, let me give you my method of sleeping I developed it about 15 years ago. Currently, I call it the Mabbott method, and it's not anywhere in any journals or articles or books or anything until that comes out. When this comes out next year, it will fully describe the Mabbott method of sleep, but I'll give you a hint right now. We can reprogram ourselves to sleep quite easily, and it doesn't take that long. So let's just say if you fancy yourself as a night owl, because this is just a perceived thing. People like to push the edges a little bit. They'll go to bed at, say, midnight, wake up at 6 and get 6 hours of sleep, right? Because they don't have to be at work till 8, work through till 4. And look, I've heard potential clients say to me, don't need any help, Nick. We just work 8 to 4, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And so I always say, oh, so your employees are all sleeping good? And they go, oh, didn't really think about that. But what I learned was we can, with just a few days, readjust the clock. For example, I just came back from Tasmania. So on a Tasmanian timeline, which is 3 hours ahead of WA, well, of course, my first morning back, I wake up early, and straight away I know that's because it's Tasmanian time, but I went back to sleep because I could, all right? And then last night, I still felt a little bit of sleep that day, so I went to bed extra early and got a 9-hour sleep, and that's caught me up on that. And from tonight forward, I will be back on my normal, which is 6 a.m. wake up, 10 past 10 in bed, and I'll be asleep by 10:15. Because what I worked out about 15 years ago is we have what we call 2 sleep waves every night. And a lot of people that I speak to say, oh, I've got insomnia, can you help me? And I say, right, fill out a sleep diary and I'll have a look at it. And I'll look at their wake up time and it's all over the place. And I'll look at their bed time and it's all over the place. And I say, well, there's your first problem. There's no routine. We have what we call a circadian rhythm. If you were camping every night, then you will wake up first light, so currently maybe 5:30, 5:45 in the morning in WA, you would be asleep by 9 o'clock at the latest every night because it's dark, as long as you've run out of beer, of course, and you've got no gizmos with you, and you are camping the old-fashioned way, you will develop a circadian rhythm that is one of the healthiest rhythms that you can get. One of the healthiest men I ever met at a mining camp, he didn't sleep in the camp. He took his bedding down to an old dry riverbed and slept down there every night. And this man was so healthy, it was incredible. And he was probably getting about 8 to 8.5 hours of sleep every night. And he was in his 50s and he was just banging along. Yeah, you could almost see another 50 years in him. It was that healthy. So my method of sleep, your first sleep wave will hit you about 16 hours and 10 minutes after you woke up. So if everyone wants to give that a shot, just write down what time you woke up, add 16 hours and 10 minutes, make sure that you're in bed ready for it with none of them. Everything else turned off, including your partner, if you've got one. And just go with it. All it is, your first sleep wave is just a couple of yawns, and then it should be all over. And it's quite interesting because when we do a series of rapid yawns, that is a sleep wave coming. So you've got your 16 hours build up of adenosine, making your brain tired, so it wants to sleep. You've got a drop in core body temperature at that point. Now that makes you physically sleepy, same as it does in the afternoon after about 1 o'clock. So two things there together, and then enter melatonin. A lot of people know that melatonin helps you get to sleep, but they don't know why. And what melatonin does is it works on a part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or we call it the SCN or the body clock, because you can say that after a couple of beers. So this body clock normally goes looking for light cues that go through your eyes, down your optic nerve, and this body clock sits basically right on top of your optic nerve, measuring the light input. Now, when that body clock is switched on and searching for light, you can be in bed with all the lights turned off, and if there's one tiny glow of a light, it will really annoy you and you can't sleep. When melatonin kicks in, you can sleep in a fully lit room with the TV going, as a lot of people do. That's melatonin just dampening down that body clock so that you can go to sleep. So that does actually happen. Now, let's just say you're sitting on the lounge watching that series on Netflix with your partner, and then you get this tap on the shoulder and it's your partner saying, hey, wake up, go to bed. You know what normally happens there? You can't get to sleep because you've missed that first sleep wave, because it only runs about 5 minutes. People don't understand that. They think it's the start of sleep, but it's not. It's a small gateway to sleep that runs about 5 minutes. Once it's gone, if you're awake, then it's about an hour to an hour and a half until the second one comes along. Now, people, let's just say you wake up at 6 and you go to bed at, say, 10:30. You've missed your sleep wave already, and you might lay there until about 11:30, finally get to sleep, and we'll call that insomnia because you can't sleep. Insomnia is not a disease. Insomnia is a symptom of something else going wrong. In this case, you're going to bed at the wrong time. It's really quite simple if only you know. And that's the problem. People just don't know, which is why I've written this book, because I think, you know, it's actually sad. What I know, everyone should know, and it would just make their life so much better. So every night, apart from Wednesday competition night, I will be in bed ready at about 10 past 10. And I can be watching something on TV, and you know all this research that says, you know, blue screen technology reduces melatonin. Well, I'm not going to say the research is wrong, but there has been some research saying, you know what, we didn't find that effect. If you want a slice of my personal philosophy, what we're doing is we might be on technology, having a look at something, watching YouTube or whatever. We get our sleep wave, we yawn a couple of times and work through it. And then we go, oh, okay. And you just finish off whatever you're doing. And then you put it down and you go to bed and there's nothing going on. And we might say, oh, I've got a reduction of melatonin. No, you went to bed at the wrong time. You missed your sleep wave. Now you have to wait for the second one. That must be, I reckon, 40 or 50% of Australian adults. Because I can go to a conference and if there's 200 people in front of me and I say who would like more sleep, there's at least 50% of the hands go up. So it's amazing how good this sleep can be when you get the full amount. And I haven't even spoken to you yet about what other really good benefits we get out of sleep. Would you like to hear more?
Yes, I would. I was just about to say, if you could expand on that, that would be great. I'm thinking to myself, there's so much gold in here, right, from what you've shared today, because there's so many, I know so many people. I mean, I've suffered, you know, from lack of sleep for a long time, for years, and used to get told you've just got insomnia, you know what I mean? And you have to, like, you know, take lots of different supplements or take sleeping tablets or whatever. And lots of people are like that, right? And so knowing that you can actually sort this out for yourself is going to help your overall health in general, not just help you sleep, right?
That's right. And over the years, I've provided sleep coaching to a few people with serious sleep issues, like one man who averaged 3 hours of sleep for 15 years, 3 hours a night for 15 years. And that was actually my very first lot of sleep coaching. This man was desperate for help. He said, Nick, this is killing me. I feel like I am dying here.
Oh, yeah.
My work is suffering. You know, I've lost my partner. You know, she's gone away and so on. You know, I don't like driving. I'm scared of crashing. And you know what? It took 5 weeks to fix it. After 15 years of these sleepless nights, bearing in mind, now, I try not to catastrophize these things because a lot of my colleagues do that, you know, and it drives me nuts. You know, you hear them on the podium at a conference and they'll say, oh, do you know that fatigue caused a meltdown at Chernobyl? And I'm thinking, rubbish. It occurred on night shift. Fatigue did not cause it. There was probably some contributing factors, but don't try and blow it up to be what it's not. What fatigue really is it's something that makes us less of a person that we would like to be. It stops us from being the best version of ourselves. And sometimes it leads us to have serious accidents on the road or in the workplace or at home that we don't want to have. That's the real issue here, not Chernobyl. I don't know anyone that was affected by Chernobyl. And I don't care either, although it was a tragic incident, as was 3 Mile Island, the grounding of the Exxon Valdez, all blamed for fatigue, but they weren't. So I try not to over-catastrophize it at all. Sleep has a vital role, but it's not just sleep on its own. There are 3 pillars of health. We've often spoken about the first 2, diet and exercise. And when I say diet, I'm talking healthy lifestyle eating. And in all of my readings, my go-to diet is a Mediterranean style diet. Lots of different colored veggies and fruits. And there are a lot of different fruits that are good for different things. And Same with the veggies, and a handful of protein to go along with it, not 2 T-bones this big. Just a handful of protein is good. Plus if you can do at least 30 minutes of physical activity every day, plus 7.5 hours of sleep on average, and you may become the best version of yourself that you can possibly be. So those 3 pillars together is, what I wish all people could do, because I believe you become a better person, better partner, a better parent, and certainly much more pleasant on the road. People cut me off sometimes or get in front of me. I don't wave my fist at them. I just go, okay, they probably need a bit more sleep. They obviously need the road more than I do, so I'll avoid them.
And I think, you don't know what's going on in their own personal lives anyway, right? Like, you don't know what's happened to them before they even got on the road. They might have had something quite tragic happen to them. They might have had some bad news. They might have had, not much sleep. You don't know what's happened beforehand. So
you don't know. Could have been an argument with the spouse.
Yes, yeah.
And that makes you so distracted.
Yes.
It's not funny. I mean, that is probably worse than texting as you drive, having just had an argument with a spouse or someone you love, because it just, the amount of brain power that goes into processing that argument, you really shouldn't be on the road.
That's a very good point. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, well, there was some really good research done out of Curtin University on truck drivers.
Yeah.
And they analysed a whole lot of crashes and what's going on with the drivers and so on. Long story short, they found that truck drivers who were depressed were 7 times more likely to have an accident. And when you think about that, and that's where a lot of these thoughts come from, when you are driving down the road and you are, what's the term they use? Where you are constantly thinking about your troubles, yes. You are not, you don't have enough resource left in your brain to focus on everything that's going on and be able to react quickly, because there are so many different processes going on when you're thinking about this deep in thought. It's the same as even if you have a hands-free discussion on the phone while you're driving, sometimes you might find yourself saying, oh, just hang on a minute, because something's going on and you need that amount of resource to deal with, everything's banking up, or there's been a crash and you've got to get around it safely and so on. The person on the other end can't see what's going on, so they'll just keep yabbering on and they don't know any better. So it's pretty much the same if you are, what's the name? It's ruminating. Like that was if you are ruminating on something that seriously happened, so you've just had a disagreement or you've got some bad news, then that rumination in itself is enough to cause such a distraction that my personal philosophy is you would probably be the equivalent of someone possibly texting and not having all of their resources on the road.
So what would you recommend then for, like, if that was, like if someone's in that situation and they're, super stressed out, they're overwhelmed, what would you recommend that they do, like before hopping in the car?
Yeah, well, if you're in the car, stop and get out. Yeah. Go and do a bit of shopping therapy or anything that you can think of that can maybe get you feeling a little bit better about yourself. And look, I would make the conscious decision if I was all bound up and tight and anxious or something like that, I would just say, no, I'm not going. And I might call someone and say, sorry, I'm just not coming. It's not worth it. Yeah. And the last time I actually pulled off the road and went home, because I was concerned about my own driving, was after a Guns N' Roses concert, and I got home quite late and only got 5 hours of sleep. Now, in the back of my mind, I know that is 3 times the risk of a crash. And I drove down the road and this person sort of cut me off, and then someone else got in front of me, slowed down, and I'm thinking, what's going on? All the idiots are around me on one day. They let every idiot on the road today. And then I looked in the rearview mirror and I thought, there's a problem. It's grumpy old mate behind the wheel. He needs to get off the freeway. And I did. I just got off the freeway and went home. And I thought, okay, well, lost a bit of money here. So what? I'm alive.
Yeah.
So that's actually my duty of care on the road. People need to realise this. If you have a smash because you've fallen asleep and you've killed someone, it's quite likely there's a prison sentence waiting for you. And it's anywhere up to, I believe the current term is 2 to 4 years. And I've known quite a few people who have gone to jail for those things. And you know what, the only thing they did wrong was accidentally fall asleep.
Yeah.
So it's not worth it. It's really not. So whether you're angry, grumpy, stressed, or sleepy, get off the road. Do yourself a favour.
That makes sense, because I know even with my own clients, am I echoing a little bit too much?
No, you're perfect.
Even with my own clients, like I create a neuroplasticity tool for them so that then they can like calm themselves down and, you know, get a handle on their emotions a little bit, so that then they're nice and calm. And I was just thinking that would be, and I always say to them, you know, before they are going off to have a conversation with someone, you know, that might just like calm down. And I was just thinking just then that would come in very handy for them before they jumped in the car,
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a bit like on that show with, what's his name? Favourite actor of mine. The one who did What Good As It Gets, Jack Nicholson.
Oh.
Remember in that film, I can't remember what it was called. It was all about anger management, I think it was called. And he taught Gru's Frubar. So I'm guessing that's something like the strategy you're talking about with the brain plasticity.
Well, basically, you do like a body scan. So you you run through your whole body, do like a body scan. And it only takes probably about 7 to 8 minutes.
Right.
And it just calms the body all the way down. And then once you've got the body calmer, then that probably takes maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Then the remaining few minutes are just working on letting the emotions just pass through you. So you're actually okay with the emotions. So rather than being pissed off at someone else or with yourself, because a lot of the time we're frustrated with ourselves, right? That emotion, it just like, it just calms the whole body down. So it calms the body down, calms your mind down, and just calms your emotions down. And then you can like go, oh, I've got some clarity now. I can think straight, you know, rather than having your mind going.
I think you and I should get together and help the road safety people put some adverts together.
I'll high five you on that.
Yeah. And I'll just quickly get back to the different stages of sleep we go through. I mean, I talk about 7.5 hours like it's just this real simple big block of Zs or something, but it's quite complex. And we go from being awakened to stage 1 sleep. Now, stage 1, as I said, it's not true sleep. The lights are on, but no one's home. The idea of stage 1 is if we're feeling drowsy, we should get in bed. That's what stage 1's all about. Now, it runs about 3 to 7 minutes. Then we hit stage 2 sleep. We don't know when that's going to happen. So again, we need to be in bed. Stage 2 sleep, we start doing some incredible, interesting things in our brain, like we take short-term memory from that area that I spoke about, the hippocampus. We take the short-term out of there, and we lay it around the brain, around the cortex, as long term. So we are doing stage 2 of learning while we sleep. Then we'll move into stage 3 and 4, deep sleep. A lot of sleep specialists just call it stage 3 or just deep sleep now, because both stages are very similar. In deep sleep, this is where we get our health and wellness benefits. And this is where I become the sleep salesman. So for you to be in a really bright, cheery place the next day, and to be mentally resilient, or I like to call it mentally fit, so that when crap happens, and it does, you just let it wash off and you go, I can deal with that. Nothing's going to faze me today. And I've found myself in that situation a lot. And it's a good place to be. In deep sleep, we get releases of serotonin. And serotonin is what I call the happy juice. This happy juice, now it's formed in the gut. So this is where you need good gut biomes. So a healthy diet, okay? And again, that physical activity is also very good for the gut too. Those combinations of things helps you get more deep sleep. In fact, it took a while for mental health practitioners to work out that someone with clinical depression, if they're taking something like a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor or an antidepressant, then that is to give them the serotonin, or allow them to keep as much serotonin floating around in the brain as long as possible, because that someone with clinical depression gets hardly any deep sleep, so they don't produce their own serotonin in large volumes. So then it took a while to work out that if we can get these guys exercising more every day and eating well, then that drives a good gut health, which helps us to form melatonin. Melatonin passes up to the brain to help you get the sleep, converts to serotonin to provide our happy juice for the day. And the research is finding people with clinical depression are coming out of depression in about half the time as someone who's just taking antidepressants. So, you know, I started getting a bit of black dog myself last year when I hopped off the plane in March 2020 from my last gig over East, because up until then, I'd spent about a year almost on the road delivering to literally thousands of people in mining and health and emergency services. My last gig was actually a factory that made body creams as a lunch and learn in Melbourne. And I stepped off the plane, and then I had all these clients ring me that week and say, sorry, we've got to cancel all that work that we had lined up. And I started feeling a bit down, because I spent a couple of years just in front of people, talking to them and sharing the love about sleep and what doesn't work and what does work. And then I'm on my own in my own little office at home, feeling lonely, feeling like the business is failing, hardly any money coming in. And you know what I did? I got off my bum and started going for a walk in the sun. And straight away it lifted me, and I started exercising, and I found myself eating better. I cut down the wine consumption. Luckily, I know what I know. So, you know, you sort of wish this on everyone else, but they don't always get it, unfortunately. So getting back to sleep, you get serotonin for free every night when you're in deep sleep. Also, in all the different stages of sleep, you also get the immune system is backed up and supported.
That's a really good point. And I mean, even in general, like, you know, for your body to heal and recover, and just to have a, you know, I have to admit, I've been pretty lucky with my immune system, considering over the years of lack of sleep that I have had, which is why I'm so excited to be talking to you, right? Amongst other reasons, just, but, you know, like I've seen so many people their immune systems are just kaput.
Yep.
And they're highly stressed. They're relying on, they're on antibiotics all the time.
Yep.
Always at the doctors for antibiotics all the time, and nothing ever works for them, and
Yep.
things like that. But they're highly stressed, and they say they're insomniacs. So.
Yep. So many things that are wrong that are easy to fix. And you mentioned earlier about people taking sleep medication. And there's a fair bit of research out there saying that when people take sleep medication, you know what, you can give them a placebo and it works as good as sleep medication.
Awesome.
You know what, I missed my calling there. I should have made a sugar pill and said, here's your sleep aid. But I would rather do things honestly. Because look, one of the other things we know about the more serious sleep medications is that, most of the medications with an X or a Z in the name, the really potent ones, you're only supposed to take for 3 to 5 days anyway. And then when you get off them, you have what we call insomnia rebound. Is that telling you something? It did nothing to change anything. So this is where we often need behavioural help, which is where, the sleep coaching that I've done for some of these people, this guy who did the 3 hours sleep every night for 15 years and 5 weeks later sent me an email saying, hey, Dr. Nick, 7 hours and 20 minutes straight through, not a single wake up. He said, first time in 15 years, and 5 years later, that's his average. And then another guy recently was on about 2.5 hours for about the last 4 years. He's, again, it took him 5 weeks. It seems to be the average. And his words were, Nick, you've given me back my life. You've added years to my life. And I said to him, hang on, you did the hard work. I told you what to do. That's all. So when this book comes out, I want people to, and you mentioned neuroplasticity, that is the way that I have changed their sleep behaviours so that they can go to bed every night, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, a couple of minutes before the alarm and think, wow, this is what it's all about, that last guy, he hadn't worked for a few years, and like within months of sleeping better, he's working again. He was making toys for I think it was either handicapped children or some group of children that were in some way either disabled or impoverished or something. But either way, he was back making stuff and feeling reinvigorated. So it's a very important thing. I can't stress it enough.
And the good thing about that too is, when you're feeling like that too, you become a lot more creative. And when you're more creative, you're more inspired, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
fulfilled.
Yes, yeah, and and you often become an inspiration to other people. I reckon you've probably had this yourself, Mandy, where people tap you on the shoulder and they say, what is wrong with you? You're so happy all the time. You make me sick. Or some people say, what do you want? And I say, serotonin, you want some? I'll teach you to sleep.
Yeah, I've had lots of people say that to me over the years. That's funny.
That's great. And funnily enough, even though your sleep hasn't been great, you've still been able to manage to do that. So I guess there's something else going on for you that is making that serotonin work. So well done. Whatever it is, keep doing it. Getting back to deep sleep, the other thing we do in deep sleep is we get these big releases of human growth hormone. That sets off a whole series of changes in the body, ending up with a hormone known as insulin growth factor 1, getting into every cell of your body to get the perimeter of your cell in perfect condition for the next day. And when I say perfect condition, they're little holes or openings in the cell that allows glucose to go into that cell and turn into energy. So when I ask people, you know, why do we sleep? And most people will say, oh, to repair the body and have energy for the next day. And that's usually the only thing that they get. They forget all the other stuff. But when you don't sleep enough, and again, we've researched this to the nth degree. Probably the most important research here was Dr. Eve Van Korter from the University of Chicago got young men, average age 22 years old, fit and healthy, tested their blood glucose levels, and they were perfectly healthy, around 5 millimoles of glucose per litre of blood. For 6 nights in a row, they only got 4 hours of sleep. Kept them awake, they exercised, they ate healthy diets. At the end of 6 nights, they were all pre-diabetic. Every one of them. They turned into the equivalent of 60-year-old males in less than a week. They had increased ghrelin levels. Ghrelin is a hormone that makes you feel hungry. A tired person is a very hungry person. They had decreased leptin levels. Leptin's a chemical that sends a message to your brain, you can stop eating now, there's enough energy in your fat stores. So you overeat as well. And of course, your motivation to choose the right food goes down. But these guys were also glucose intolerant, which means the cells in their body sort of closed those little holes to the glucose, and the glucose bounces off the cell wall and stays in the fluid around that cell, and then eventually gets turned into glycogen and stored on your bum. So you feel lethargic and absolutely lacking in energy because you can't produce your own energy, and you try and eat more simple carbs to get that burst of energy, which doesn't come because it just bounces off the cell walls, and you just get fatter and fatter. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, including a young lady, probably mid-30s, was waking up at 3 o'clock to do an hour in gym before she went to the mine and worked, and was putting on weight every day from that because she was only getting about 4 to 5 hours sleep and not, and physical activity of an hour in the gym plus 12 hours in the workplace. And she was only, because she was getting short sleep, instead of losing weight in the gym, she was putting weight on. Uncanny, isn't it?
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense.
So that's all of the deep sleep benefits. Oh, there's others as well, but we haven't got that many days to talk about it. Then once we finish that deep sleep, we go back up, do some more stage 2, and then rapid eye movement sleep. That's where we sort our stuff out. So someone that is clinically depressed spends hours basically in REM sleep sorting their stuff out. Anyone with anxiety, same deal. And this is where you often wake up through the night and can't get back to sleep. But for a person who is sleeping a healthy 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, in REM sleep, we do part 3 of learning. So we've done the short term during the day, we've taken it to long term overnight, and then in REM sleep, we sort out where does all this stuff go? What do we attach it to? We come up with brand new concepts, we add to our growing body of knowledge. If you're doing a TAFE degree, a trade, a university degree, every night when we get to REM sleep, we are building up our encyclopedia of everything we know. And if you think about how many billions of bits of information we've already got there, this is a very deliberate and very careful process of exactly where we put these memories and how we network them so that it's actually useful for you.
Yeah.
Which is why if there's any university students listening, doing all-nighters teaches you nothing. You will not do stage 2 and 3 of learning. So don't do it. What you don't know before an exam, you don't know. Brush up on what you do know and get good at it. But if you can get, well, a student, usually a teenager, needs 9 hours of sleep. And that is very, very important. Those who get 9 hours of sleep just tend to retain information a lot easier. I also call REM sleep a part of sleep where you sort your safety out too, because we have developed what I call safe work instructions. So when you get out of bed in the morning, if both feet hit the floor at the same time, you've ticked off your very first safe work instruction. So far, you haven't fallen over, okay? And then you go to the toilet. And if you haven't made a mess on the floor, then you've ticked off a few more safe work instructions. Then you might go and make a cuppa, and you haven't burnt yourself or you haven't electrocuted yourself, you can tick off a few more. And if you can go through that whole day just ticking off safe work instructions, you've made it to work safely in the car, you haven't had any of these what we call brain farts along the way, and then you go to work and you haven't caught your finger in machinery or hurt anyone else, then you can be pretty confident that you've had enough rapid eye movement sleep through the night where we have prepared your brain to do the right thing today. And again, all of these target zeros that I hear when I go to mines and roads and all sorts, you know, all of these strategies towards target zero, they will not be realized until we understand that when you get 7.5 hours of sleep on average, you get about 2 hours of rapid eye movement sleep, which sorts out your safety for tomorrow. Yeah. And if you have one sleep like I did that night for the Guns N' Roses concert, 5 hours, I missed out on probably at least an hour to an hour and a half of REM sleep. And that's probably why I was just a little bit, you know, not understanding of what was going on the road when people were cutting me off and things like that. And, you know, I was thinking it was their fault, but it wasn't, it was mine. I was lacking resilience and I didn't have the mental capacity to deal with it. Yeah. So I got off the road and went home.
And with REM sleep, you know, because you're talking about people with anxiety and so forth, and can REM sleep go for longer than that 2 hours? Like, you know, because if people are, yeah.
Well, it does if you're clinically depressed, often we get more than a standard 2 hours of REM sleep, which is why you get less deep sleep.
Yes.
Which is why it's hard to get out of depression.
Yes.
Because you're not getting your serotonin.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't understand is, let's just say you have 1 6 hour sleep, right?
Yes.
And the hour and a half that you pinch off at the end should be roughly about an hour of REM sleep in there.
Yeah.
And so that day, you're at least 1 sausage short of the safety barbecue. So that's a problem. When you go to sleep that night, as soon as your brain goes into deep sleep, it tends to change and then it goes straight into a big patch of REM sleep. It's what we call REM rebound. It's actually a pathology to go to sleep and get straight into REM sleep almost. But you see this in people who have had a short sleep the night before. The brain will go, we need REM sleep to sort your stuff out. So we're going to do that. And if you only get 6 hours sleep again, guess what you miss out on that night? The deep sleep, because the REM sleep is taking its place. And so your brain will catch up on the smart stuff, but tomorrow you'll be lethargic, glucose intolerant, and lacking tolerance for everything. It's today you're Mr. or Mrs. Grumpy.
Yes.
And Mr. or Mrs. Tired. But you might work a bit safer. But still not as safe as you could, because now you're 3 hours behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So, you know, people have tried arguing with me in the past saying, oh, look, 6 hours of sleep's fine, you know. I could imagine having this conversation with Maggie Thatcher, because she would say anyone who sleeps more than 5 hours is just being lazy. You don't need it, you know. And there is some discussion about whether her lack of sleep over the lifespan may have given her an early retirement, so to speak. But I don't argue with people on that point. I just point out that, you know, if you get 6 hours every night, then on one night when you wake up, you're going to have brain farts during the day. The next day, you're just going to feel tired, lethargic and grumpy. And then you go back to another unsafe day and then another lethargic day. So I just say, yes, you can live on 6 hours, no argument there. But here's the thing, ask yourself this question. Are you currently the best version of you that you can be?
Yeah.
Are you the best friend, the best partner, the best parent? Watch them throw their hands in the air and go, yeah, can I go now?
I was going to say, just asking that straight off the bat is like enough to make someone go,
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I nearly always leave my audience with that, because that is, look, I think that's crucial. We can all be better than we are, definitely. And you know, I'm from a big family, and I have a big family, and you know, I love people. I love seeing happy people. And, you know, I actually get quite sad when I see people grumpy and, you know, miserable, and you think, you know, there's so many things you can do to feel better.
Yeah, I agree.
So many.
And there was something else that just popped into my head. So I've got another question. This will end up being like 5 hours. No, it won't. You know, how you have GABA supplements?
Yep.
Yeah. And like, and especially, you know, like, because I wonder, you know, when people are, because over the years, I've had so many friends that will stay up really late and they'll just drinking until they fall asleep. And I used to say to them, well, don't you feel sick in the morning? You know, and this is women and men. And they said that was the only way that they could get to sleep each night, was just to do that. And I was just wondering how, you know, because how that affects like GABA receptors, because that can't be healthy, right? To be doing that every night, to rely on that.
No, and it's seriously not. Look, one of the main questions I get nearly everywhere I go is, how much alcohol until I affect my sleep? Yeah. And look, we know that you can have 1 or 2 standard drinks. Yeah. And that seems to be the measure that just puts you in a comfortable position. Yeah. I don't know if we're allowed to say it anymore, but we used to call it Dutch courage. Yes, yes. When it comes to competition pool and darts and things, you know, it's like have a couple of drinks and all of a sudden you're confident. Yes, you know, almost unbeatable. Now, I think at that level, it's probably not going to affect your sleep. In fact, we do know it can help you just relax a little bit more and get to sleep. So that's why some people use it. Yeah. And if you stop at 1 to 2 standard drinks, it doesn't seem to affect your deep sleep, your REM sleep or anything else, but nearly always you will wake up 4.5 hours and have a pee, all right? And it is really quite accurate, because, you know, sometimes I'll say to an audience, what time did you wake up last night? 2 o'clock. So I'll work back and I'll go, oh, okay, so you were in bed at 9:30, and they go, what? How did you know? Were you in my room? It's 4.5 hours. Once you drink, say, 4 or 5 or 6 standard drinks, you'll wake up in 3 hours. So every 90 minutes you get into REM sleep, you see. And when you're in a REM sleep, the brain goes, apart from sorting your stuff out, it'll also do a quick check on your body. How are you going? Aches or pains will wake you up so you can roll over. Dog's jumped on bed and it's laying on you, cutting off your circulation, you'll kick the dog off. Or if you've got a bladder happening, well, it'll wake you up and say, choices, and you know which choice you take here. Once you get into about a dozen standard drinks, we cannot with any confidence say that you will do all of the sleep stages that you need to have a good sleep. In fact, there's a lot of indications that it cuts down your deep sleep, so you don't get your serotonin, your human growth hormone. You certainly don't get your immune system bolstered. You don't transfer short to long-term memory, which is why some people wake up and go, oh, what happened after 10 o'clock? Or who's this person beside me? Even worse. And also you don't get as much REM sleep. So the next day you're at least 2 sausages short of that safety barbecue. Your sleep after about 10 or 12 standard drinks is pretty much rubbish. I would like to equate that to being in a alcoholic coma more than asleep, where you get hardly anything out of your sleep apart from maybe a headache and a bit of a bad name for whoever you upset the night before.
Exactly. I guess it's interesting for me because I don't drink a lot, and when I was younger I used to drink a lot, but over the years I sort of just, you know, decided that I didn't really like I wasn't horrible to people, but, you know, I thought I was Superwoman or a superhero on it, so, you know, like really, and but I just didn't like the way that I felt the next day either, because I wanted to always be able to operate on my toes and have a lot of clarity and think fast and things like that. So but yeah, it's just been interesting over the years. I've met so many people that have drunk themselves to sleep, and I just wondered how that would screw up their, I could have Googled it, but I just never did. I always just thought, oh, I wonder how that affects their immune system and things like, because they were always sick, right? They were always getting sick and they weren't recovering from injuries fast enough, or and they were unhappy. They were very unhappy as well.
Well, they would be. They don't get enough serotonin.
Yeah.
And when we look at long-term alcoholics, for example, and especially those who have been reformed and they're now not, reformed alcoholics, I guess, so to speak, they often reflect on their life and go, there is a big gap in my life and I've no idea what happened over those years.
Yeah.
A lot of them have said that to me, and what I explained to them is you didn't do the processes of phase 2 and phase 3 of learning. You only did phase 1, which is you learn things, but then you didn't put it down as long-term memory, and then you didn't sort it out either. So it sort of makes sense. And believe it or not, I met one woman who drank so much coffee every day that she had a 5-year addiction. She's over it now. But she said to me, for that 5 years, I've got hardly any memories.
That I could see that happening. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
How much did she drink? Roughly 20 cups a day from a coffee machine.
Oh,
we are talking some serious caffeine there. So, I mean, with that much stimulant in your system, you cannot possibly get the sleep you need.
Which makes sense, because people that say they have suffered from insomnia for years or whatever have big like 4 or 5 years or 10 years even, where it just feels like they just can't remember certain patches of it, you know.
It's pretty scary what we do to ourselves sometimes.
This is so cool. Keep going. Sorry, I know I keep interrupting you.
It's good, because sometimes when you talk to me, I think of something else as well. Seriously, we could do this for 10 or 12 hours, which is why I've written the book, because I have absolutely no outlet for all of the information I have. You know, some of the clients, I do a 3-hour training session. That's my standard. I used to do 6 hours before, but, you know, it's a long time out of the workforce. So we do 3 hours. Some clients say, oh, I'm okay for you to going up to 4 hours. but most of them say, can you cut it down to 2?
Yeah.
Or can you cut it down to 1? And I'll say, but then 1 hour is not training.
Yeah.
1 hour is like, oh, that's good information. That's interesting. 2 hours is, oh, that's great. I'm going to try that. 3 hours is, I'm not only going to try that, I'm going to teach my family because I want them to be the best version of themselves as well.
Yes.
So writing the book gives me a chance to get about 20 hours worth out, or 25 years on all of these case studies. And, you know, you could, in fact, just keep on writing that for the rest of my life, but I've got to get it out there.
Yes.
Because we learn stuff just about every day.
And that your book will be out when next year? Sometime next year?
Well, I'm guessing. So I've already got a publishing contract with LR Price in London.
Yeah.
And they say that, you know, anywhere up to about 9 months. So I'm hoping it might be out for my birthday on the 22nd of May next year. Well, that's my hope.
Awesome.
Don't quote me on that. Well, I think I just did quote myself, but I'm hoping before the end of the financial year, so June at least. And the earlier the better, because the sooner people start sleeping better, the safer the roads become, the safer the workplaces. And I'm hoping we can all be a little bit nicer to each other, just personally.
Yeah, and like how more fulfilled people will be within their lives, right? By getting like way better, like health, quality of life, mental health.
Yep.
That's just,
Everything.
Emotional health. Yeah.
Yep. Sports wise as well. You know, one of my friends plays disc golf. It's a game that not a lot of people play.
Yeah.
But this gentleman could throw a frisbee for 100 meters. That's his driver, frisbee.
Yeah.
And I showed him my method of sleep one day, and he went from an average of 6 hours to 7.5 hours just for 3 nights before his next tournament. And his average throw went out to 120 meters.
Wow.
So he improved his best performance by 20% just by getting what should be the right amount of sleep.
Yeah.
Isn't that just crazy when you think of how much better we can do? And I get it. I find myself very interested at what coaches do with teenagers, especially in any water sports like swimming, diving, anything like that. What time do they get these teenagers up? Like 4 o'clock to get them in the water for 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. What teenager do you know is going to be in bed early enough to get 9 hours of sleep before 4 a.m.?
Yep.
That means you'd have to be in bed by about 7 o'clock, not happening on this planet. These teenagers like to go to bed 11 or 12 o'clock, if you're lucky. And some good research by Dr. Philip Aganda from New Zealand last year showed that on their non-training days, some of these athletes were performing better than they were on their training days because they were sleeping in.
Yeah.
Go figure. What are we doing to our best sports people?
Yes. And look at, I mean, just in general for teenagers, like mental health is such a huge issue. That's why they need that healing sleep,
Yes,
right? But for
absolutely.
athletes with that added extra pressure,
Oh,
look at
yes.
many athletes that we don't hear about until like 20 years down the track, or 10 years down the track, that suffered severe mental health issues, during their teenage years of being an athlete.
Absolutely, yeah. And all the other horrible stuff that's coming out these days.
Yes.
But I mean, when you take people like Usain Bolt, he would often have a nap in the afternoon before his meets.
Yeah.
And look at him go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. I would love to get in front of more athletes and say to them, look, if you're swimming, I don't want you in the pool till 8 o'clock in the morning. And if you wake up at 6, and I want you in bed by 9 o'clock getting 9 hours.
Yeah.
And a teenager can do that, especially if they know that they're going to be performing the next day. They will do better.
Yeah.
It's no doubt about that. I think we are limiting all of these athletes quite a lot by saying, well, I need you here by 6 or whatever silly time that they start.
Yeah. Well, in every single industry, when it comes to peak performance, sleep is so important, right? So, you know, and even like if, like in the entrepreneurial world, it's like the quality of life now has become such a huge thing, where before it was like push, 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 push.
Yeah.
You know, make fun of people if they want to have power naps during the afternoon or whatever. It was a big joke, right? You know, where now it's like changed. Now they're, you know, they're discovering now, well, hey, like peak performance isn't like, you know, operating on hardly any sleep and, you know, being pumped up on coffee or stimulants. It's now like really taking care of our health in a whole different way now and getting plenty of sleep.
I noticed that in my road safety days. I spent 8.5 years in road safety with ARRB Group as a road safety scientist. And for a while there, I thought that my reports were a bit more important than my sleep sometimes.
Yeah.
Like a uni student that's okay to stay up late, I would stay up late writing these reports. And some of these reports would go to places like the National Transport Commission or Austroads or local government authorities for road safety. You know, these were very important reports on, you know, speed and school crossing safety, all sorts of different things. And I would find that the next morning I would look at what I did the night before and I would shake my head in disbelief and go, oh my goodness, look at the glaring errors here. So 18 hours awake and 16 hours of sleep makes me produce crap reports.
Yes.
So then I found that by getting 16 hours awake and 8 hours of sleep on average, I was producing reports as good as I possibly could. And I didn't have to edit them and fix them up the next day. And I often had a bit of a chuckle to myself when some of the CEOs of large groups would say, oh, if you're getting more than 4 hours sleep, your business can't be doing well. And I think, I wonder how good it could be if you got 7 or 8, how brilliant you could be. If you're this good already, how brilliant could you be if you got your 7s and 8s?
Yeah.
You know, some people have come up with the most amazing things during sleep, like in REM sleep, for example, when we're sorting our stuff out. I think his name was Mendel something, the one who developed the periodic table of elements. He spent 7 years working on that. And then in REM sleep, he wakes up, gets out of bed, writes it all down, goes back to bed. The next morning, there it is. It's done. 7 years in the making, but one night to sort it out and get it right. It's just incredible how good we can be with the right sleep.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, this has been awesome. I'm so grateful that we've been able to do this, and feel free to, if you want to use this, because when I've finished editing this and everything, which I probably won't edit much of it at all. But like, if you need to use this at all to for, you know, when you're pitching yourself to places, the different campaigns, like, go for it, because there's so much gold in this that I could just see like companies and people wanting to put out commercials on this, just going, oh, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate really in that this profession that I sort of fell into it. I didn't really choose it. I don't have a diploma or degree in sleep or anything. I've got a PhD in psychology from doing some big experiments. Where I developed a fatigue monitoring system and then used that to test drivers doing 14 consecutive night shifts and things like that. But it just sort of, I don't know, progressed over the years and changed. And now what I really love doing is helping my fellow humans do better.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been lucky enough to rubbed shoulders with some lovely people in the past, which is why I reached out to you to hook up, because, you know, I've got some really good friends in mental health. Tasha Bloomhall from Blooming Minds, you know, she's one of my heroes. Mo Sorzia, who's also, you know, ex-mates in construction, and just wonderful, wonderful man. And then on the physical side of things, you know, physical health, you know, exercise and diet, Samantha Jackson, you know, just wonderful human beings trying to change the world for the right reasons.
And guess what? I did a podcast episode with Mo, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it's coming out over the next week. I'm publishing it over the next week, so there you go.
Fantastic. He is an absolute gentleman, that man.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, he is amazing. Oh, so good. Oh, thank you so much for coming on board today and doing this. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it was almost enough for 2 podcasts there.
And where can people reach out to you? So before we wrap up, like, where can people reach out to you?
Okay, 1 second.
Yep.
My website, Beyond Midnight, beyondmidnight.org.
Can you bring that in a little bit closer?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's me.
That's awesome.
You can sign up for my newsletters there. You can email me directly at nickham, beyondmidnight.com.au. And as I said, you know, be looking out for that later on.
Yes. Thank you for holding that up close too.
My favourite picture, I don't know if you can actually see that. It's supposed to say shift workers, but someone defaced it. Anyway,
that's awesome.
And a bit of fun in training.
And I'll would you like me to include like your social media?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. I don't do much other social media. I need to get a little bit more savvy with that, because, you know, leading into promoting this book later on, I need to build a bit of a following to try and get it out there as much as I can.
Yeah.
One thing that I am currently doing is, currently the number is 26 little videos of between 5 and 10 minutes of little snippets of information that we've spoken about and some stuff that we haven't spoken about. So I'm going to put them on YouTube 1 week at a time and build that up to until we get to the book launch at some point.
Awesome, fantastic.
So I'll try and build a bit of a following, because hey, it'll be good to sell the books. That's not the main thing here. The main drive is I just want people to understand sleep better and become better people. Yeah.
Well, this is definitely going to help. I'm super grateful that you've come on board today, and that I can be a little bit of a part in, you know, helping people discover you and find out more about you. So
thank you.
You know, thank you for reaching out to me too, because I was even telling my friends, oh my goodness, I spoke to this bloke today, you know, he's so amazing, the things we spoke about with sleep, and I can't wait to have him on the podcast. And
no, it's good. And as Samantha Jackson said to me, good people helping good people.
Yes, exactly. I agree.
That's what that's about.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Nick, for coming on the podcast today. It's been really awesome. And make sure everyone that, you know, when the book comes out, like, I'll make sure I might do a rerun of this actually when your book comes out as well, just to remind everyone to go out and get it. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on board today. It's been brilliant. It's been absolute gold all the way through.
No, it's my pleasure. I just want people to know at least nearly as much as what I do about sleep, and so we can all be better people.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much. Okay, see you later, everybody.
Hey, beautiful man. If you're going through stress, need insight, direction to lighten the load, brother, and support during these challenging times, reach out to me. It's no secret that there are so many men suffering at the moment, amazing men, and they're so keen to get help, but don't know what that looks like. So I've created a 6-week one-to-one resilience coaching package for men with one-to-one coaching calls and support via Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp in between calls to help put yourself back in the driver's seat of life. And there's a strong level of trust that goes hand in hand with walking by someone's side during their challenges and their celebrations too. And that's what I'm here for, brother. So message me and let's find your path to true resilience.